talk to us that day, the next day, they were gonna go out there and make this repair. No supervisor told them yes or no, nobody. They decided themselves that yes, we could show a profit, we could show a positive cost, enforcement here by doing this, and they did it.
I think probably one of the places that Ed's looking to gather this increased value. You talked to guys that were old timers there, right? Been there 25, 26 years. And what they said is, we have a good work ethic. The guy says, I've always worked hard, and I will continue to work hard. He says, this makes me want to put in more. In other words, because it's mine, I can't blame someone else, the supervisor told me to do this. Yeah, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I'll do a half job, whatever. He doesn't have anybody to blame. It's them to blame and nobody else. Yeah, nobody else to blame. Go ahead.
Couple things. In the north area, there's doing the same type of thing.
North area has a self-directed work team. I cannot tell you their success.
Okay. I've heard stories of the condition of plants in the north area. So with what you saw, what kind of shape was that plant in?
I didn't go in the plant.
The plant was clean, it's very small. There are 4 Felton, wheel generators. It's 25.5 megawatts total output. The whole plant's about the same as this room. No.
Each unit, you got 3 6-megawatt and 1 7-megawatt.
Yeah. So, but it was clean and apparently well taken care of, but the Pelton was built in 1903. They look like they're built in 1903. Ball head Woodward governors. So, you're talking about real basic equipment. But everything's working and working well.
At the Headworks area, Roger, the shop there looked as well as most any shop I would expect to look. I didn't see, degradation. That's a question.
No, the machine
Looks
shop
pretty
was
good.
tidy and well run.
But
But nothing's new
I'm
or
just wondering,
fancy.
because I've heard a lot of descriptions about the Baker plants.
Yeah, we didn't visit the big. We went to the electron plant for the purpose of finding where it does, supposedly it works, it's held up as a success, to find out from the employees, the representative employees, okay, what's your view of it? We've heard the warm, glow, grab the self-directed, hold on and squeeze it. We want to hear from your end.
Well, so you're sensing quite a bit of pride and ownership in that place too.
I would say there was probably more now than what you would have found 2 years ago. That would be my guess.
They're very proud of themselves.
Yes.
Those
Having
people
made
are
it work.
normally assigned to that plant, but how much roving between the different places?
In the central planning grid, they have a chart that goes out, and it tries to put together major works. CIP works, major maintenance works. They, as a team, or this central planning group with representatives from all, they as a team determine how many people do we need to do that job there. And they assign a number of people to that. They say there's at least 18, for example. Now what they do is they go, well, who have we got available? And there was 4 people from Electron that were at, I can't remember which plant they were at that day. They were at Snoqualmie that day. They have teams that row kind of constantly, and then other team members that row sort of constantly, and then the people that are almost every day show up to the plant, and still if they need them somewhere else, off they go. And I don't have a Puget contract, so I can't tell you about any travel pays or any of that. I didn't hear them say anything about it.
They don't have a lot of things in that area, but they even decide if they work overtime on a call. They even decide themselves whether they will work overtime on some sort of
peeled and they never painted it. It's like, as they've said, they've let things go for so many years that they're trying to start catching up, and painting all the beautification wasn't on top of their list. But even the outside of Lower Baker, we went to Lower Baker, it was, that crane was rusted. I mean, it hadn't had any paint.
Well, I noticed where the mudslides come in the powerhouse and stuff, they still have it completely repaired, there's a big old piece of this in there, you know, where the mud comes down to the powerhouse. And the beam, the big wooden beam that has the old wooden beam there, and it was, you can see where it shattered, and the rocks and it was on. So, no, they hadn't completely repaired the powerhouse. But I guess, you know, it wasn't a priority. in their-
Well, they spent a lot of money fixing that room, because they had to have all the wood, you know, special made because of the size, and had to get special milk cut.
Yeah, they don't know.
But did you folks note any, like they talked about Winterfest at the Northwest Park Bowl, did they bring that up at all? or was that-
Yeah, we talked to them
We
about
talked
Winterfest.
about that, actually.
We don't use that.
They said they've got one computer.
We never mess with that.
Yeah.
What a total waste of time.
They knew what it was, though. you know.
They did know what it
They did
was.
know what it was.
But they said, you know, why? That was their view. And they're the ones that we learned where they're from, right?
Yeah.
No, it would appear that their people, at least the people, I'll just say this, the people in Electron were not putting a lot of focus into a maintenance man piece.
What's the difference between north and south?
It would appear based, and it seems, I guess the thing to say about it the most is, it's still growing. The process is still growing. Some of them said they haven't even reached the top of the bell curve yet, for gosh sakes. I know the time that they need to make this process work. And they've been at 2 years now. You know, how long will it take them?
We're still spending a third of their time.
Yeah, they're just coming up to the top of the bell curve.
It would occur to me that once they get trained, they'll have demonstrated over 3 years of keeping the plants running until we get one time.
But that's a possibility, but that would remove all of the trust factor that Ed had placed into them, wouldn't it?
And that's.
If that were the case, I think it would fall apart miserably.
Unless they're documenting things that are documented, and they should be.
They very well could. I can't say that. I can't say whether they are nutrition. They have reduced so far, the lower levels now have been reduced to attrition. I can't say what the future may hold. I can only say that the people seem to be positive. These people that we've visited seem to be positive that they make this work. Go ahead, sorry.
My terminal reported, this site last year there, that they have been made a grants program on nearly completed and this will be up and operational. Are they given an option within?
All I can say is Mike can talk to the manager.
Between Captain Cancel and the Paramount.
I was at the north end, the north region of Future Power, and then Lonnie and Tony went to the south end. And the north end made their presentation, the north end seemed to be, I think, progressed more farther with it, maybe accepted it.
Although actually it was the South area groups from Quality Ball, Randy, last name escapes me. Berg. Huh? Berg?
I'm about to repeat what the commitment that Norm made to English Plus. There's another movement here about English only. And I said during the campaign, and I mean this as well, that we ought to have no student escape our public school system without learning at least 2 languages. English probably should be one of them. But 2 languages teaches you how to learn a 3rd and a 4th, and more than importantly, allows you to experience another culture and to learn through that culture. And again, it's in our enlightened self-interest economically as a region, and personally, if we're to have a rich and meaningful life and to take the full measure of what our city offers us. Now, as we begin today's program, I want you to know that all of you are pieces of the dream of Martin Luther King, Jr., and each one of you should put into action the overriding values that make our city special. I could not be more proud of your efforts, nor more grateful. Thank you.
We have to lower this for me. My name is Joanne Antone, and I'm the Citywide Diversity Coordinator, and I'm going to serve as MC for this ceremony. First, I'd like to introduce Ian Edelstein, who's been taking your pictures, and Jerome Gates, who's videotaping the ceremony for Channel 28, and Deidre Lynham, who is going to keep us organized up here. I'd like to recognize before we begin everyone who was nominated for an award. As I call your name, please stand, and I'll ask the audience to hold your applause until the end. Virginia Anderson, Seattle Center; Joseph Broussard, Seattle Public Utility; the Citywide Athletic Unit, Parks Department; the Crosstalk Committee, Seattle Center; the Environmental Partnership Team, Seattle Public Utilities; Paula Harris, Office for Civil Rights; Brian Howland, Seattle Police Department; Jaime Gallardo, Office for Civil Rights; Phil Irvin, City Light; Miley Jose, City Light; Eileen Newell, Seattle Public Utilities; Hoon Nguyen, Seattle Public Library; Patty Pettish, Parks and Recreation; Eric Prindle, Parks and Recreation; Ed Potterhurst, City Light; the Redevelopment Division of Seattle Center; the Seattle Association of Hispanic Firefighters; the South Power Station Crew 52 from Seattle City Light, and the Undoing Institutional Racism Group from Housing and Human Services. Please stand and take a bow and give them a round of applause. Okay. We're going to first start with certificates, first for groups and then individual employees. After certificates, we're going to present plaques to our private sector organizations and then plaques to employees. What we're going to do here is going to tell you a little about each recipient with a little help from a few department heads, and then call the recipients up here to receive their awards. Now, some instructions for you larger group and for the small groups. As we present your group certificates, we're going to take a group photo, and we are going to give you individual certificates, but not until the end of the program. We're going to give you one certificate with the name of your group, but the certificates with your name we'll give to you after. It'll just be more timely that way. Now, our first group demonstrates that diversity goes way beyond race and gender and gets to the heart of how groups of people can come together and work together who have different work styles, cultures, and even different agendas, that they can work toward a common goal. This first group of city employees, quite frankly, is amazing. A diverse interdepartmental team of over 40 people from 12 city departments. Sometimes 12 staff members can hardly work together. These people somehow found a way to find common ground. They worked with an even more diverse community of citizens who represented 17 languages and planned a major redevelopment project. The constituent issues that they all dealt with literally ranged from A to Z. Agriculture to zoning. Working together with the Seattle Housing Authority and the community, the Holly Park team was a partner in the successful redevelopment of Holly Park. And here they are in alphabetical order: Mary Jo Alejo, Steve Antiput, Beverly Barnett, Priscilla Call.
Can't go that fast.
Teresa Cherniak, Bobby Daniel, Marcus Daniel, Chuck Depew, Mary Kay Doherty, Earl Edwards, Doug French, Betty Gallarosa, Mark Greenow, Dean Griswold, Jerry Hendrickson, Audrey Hansen, Rich Hooper, Veronica Jackson, Gloria Leonard, Rick Lupton, Vince Lyon, Mike McCullough, Michael Mann, Judy Nevins, Rick Nishi, Ty of Bedo, Kay Pappas, Dina Peel, Arlene Ragozin, Saroja Reddy, Rich Richmeyer, Marilyn Senor, Juanita Serrato, Judy Singh, Lionel Sun, Terry Sutton, Lori Swallow, Ed Switage, Hugh Tobin, Francis Tong, Woody Wilkinson, and our very special guest from Seattle Housing Authority, Harry Thomas. Give this interdepartmental group a hand. Excellent. Come on back after the show for your own certificates. Ken Bounds. This next group of employees is a smaller group of employees. These folks are responsible for youth and adult programs in the city's outdoor facilities, and I've asked Ken Bounds, the Parks and Recreation Superintendent, to please tell us a little more about them.
Thank you, and I'll underline little. She wouldn't let me talk as long as I could, but Citywide Athletics is a group in our department that really embodies the whole concept of diversity. I know personally from growing up in sports that athletics is a way of building bridges between cultures. This group on a day-to-day basis organizes leagues throughout all of the city and school district facilities, whether they be gyms or fields, and they deal with on a day-to-day basis this time of year young people playing basketball, over 7,000 young people playing basketball, their parents who sometimes may get out of hand, their coaches who sometimes may get out of hand, and the officials who everybody thinks is wrong all the time. And they have to deal in an environment of multicultural, multi-generational, and deal with issues of conflict, and they do it professionally, and I'm very proud of their contribution to this city. They do build bridges between cultures as part of athletics, and the bridges they built will last for a long time.
So now we're going to ask the Citywide Athletics unit to come on up. Patty Pettish, Dennis Cook, Larry Sunblad, John Bates, Denise Day, Shelley Sachs, and Elizabeth Hunter. Come on up.
I'm just giving last names now. So
Up next, I'm pleased to introduce 4 distinguished panel members who have been asked to respond to Michael's thought-provoking comments today. They represent 4 main theme areas that many think about when considering big visions such as this one. They come at the subject today from those prisms. The 4 are urban economy, urban ecology and sustainability, transportation integration, and finally community, culture, and public space. And I'm pleased to introduce them now. On my immediate right, discussing urban economy, is Chris Sjoblom. He is the Vice President of Research and an economist at the Washington Research Council, where he has been since 1995. Chris has authored several economic reports while at the council. In addition, he serves as a member of the Governor's Council of Economic Advisors. Prior to coming out to Seattle, Chris was a professor of economics and public policy at both the University of Pennsylvania and Haverford College. To his right, Gary Lawrence, talking about urban ecology and sustainability. He is a principal sustainability consultant with Arup. He is based here in Seattle. He has assisted public, private, and NGO organizations with analysis and strategic planning towards sustainable development. Gary lectures widely on these topics. He has served as a member of the United States delegation to Habitat II and as a senior policy advisor to the Global Environment Center of USAID. He is an adjunct professor at the Huxley College of Environmental Studies at Western Washington University. Gordon Price joins us today from the great city just to the north of the border, Vancouver, British Columbia. No one can doubt his experience in city planning. He just completed a 6th term as an elected member of the Vancouver City Council. While in that capacity, Gordon has distinguished himself as a leader in many areas, including transportation, the topic he will address for us today. He has written extensively about the issue and has served on the board of the Greater Vancouver Transportation Authority, known as TransLink. And finally, Milenko Matanovic is here. He is the executive director of the Pomegranate Center, an organization he created in 1986. It is located right here in Issaquah, Washington, though its work extends quite a ways. The center is Milenko's efforts to get working artists involved in building better communities. It is a nonprofit dedicated to creating more meaningful gathering spaces in communities and to energize community-based planning. And there you have them, our distinguished panel. If they don't have an answer, there may not be one. So please join me in welcoming them all here today. We've given them all 3 minutes to make some brief responses to Michael and some thoughts of their own, and we begin with Chris.
It's a tough act to follow. I guess what we need to, what I'm supposed to do is say a little bit about how cities work economically and how that will influence or could influence the way the waterfront is redeveloped. So starting off, the economists, as they try and study the way cities work, at least initially, see transportation as being the major force shaping the way they're laid out, particularly as 19th centuries were laid out, where the cities coalesce around a particular transportation node and locations of activities are determined by relative transportation costs getting goods and people to and from the node. This, of course, has changed with the advent of the car and the truck, which have greatly allowed dispersal away from the central node. Seattle's waterfront was the key to the city in the 19th century. Remember, the city was founded by the Denny's and Terry's, who came here and named the place that they started off New York Alki. New York Alki. They saw themselves as founding a commercial city from the very beginning. In fact, they came here, founded the city, and then went looking for Yesler and brought him here with the mill. So commerce was here at the very beginning, even before manufacturing. In the early days, as the residents in the city attempted to dominate the region, the waterfront was the key. The mosquito fleet we all talk about was the way that the commercial interests in this city extended their reach to the manufacturing communities that were located around the Sound. Most of those mills shipped their goods directly out to the markets by ship, but they relied on Seattle for supplies. Now, as we move into the 20th century, the railroads come and such, and Seattle sort of is losing, the waterfront is losing its 19th century role as the transportation hub. But the city itself is becoming a more and more important place for the creation of intellectual property and such. And the question will be how we can use the waterfront to enhance that kind of activity going forward. It no longer has its transportation role particularly, but it's going to become an important amenity to the other activities that are clustering downtown.
Gary?
She did it.
I was listening with fascination to Michael's discussion about the Green Line, and it reminded me of a time that through a series of events of interest probably only to me, I ended up being in Beirut along the Green Line with Prince Charles doing a community planning charrette. And while we were there, the Druze militia started shelling the street. And the building was shaking, and there was dust everywhere, and the displays were falling over, and I was thinking to myself, you know, this is just like when I was doing planning in Seattle. The waterfront is a place where there's an intent to introduce all sorts of different conflicts about a variety of types of ecology. It's a purposeful creation of conflict. And sustainability is essentially an approach, an intent to try to provide a more broader understanding of the various systems involved, and not to find balance, but to understand the trade-offs, what's worth doing that requiring mitigation, what you actually have to accomplish in order to create a future, or at least enable a future, in which the city of Seattle and the nature upon which it depends for so many things is all successful together. In one sense, sustainability is an inevitability. People ask me, can we sustain the Earth? Well, that's kind of a big question. The question is, can we sustain human society over time in ways that we would prefer? Because we see all over the world we have human societies in collapse. The question for Seattle is, what role does the waterfront, with all of its good purposes and intentions, play in securing a better future for the human society that will populate this place? Now, there are many things about nature that we need to take into account in terms of ecological issues. You know, in part, much of the natural habitat has been permanently altered and we won't be reclaimed. It's unlikely that we're going to have streams running through the middle of the city and a thriving salmon stream population as part of this waterfront planning process. But there are many ecological aspects of the city that we can improve along the water to the benefit of a number of other folks. Sustainability is about success. It's not about winning. Success I always talk about as a group term and winning as an individual term. As you're into this planning process about the future of the city, there will be a lot of people who are trying to win. And in my experience in the city, that has meant that those powers cancel one another out and we end up backing into the future. We end up making sure that that group doesn't win, and we'd rather do nothing than allow them to win. And we have a hard time actually coming together and saying, this is actually what we prefer, and this is the future we're trying to seize. One more thing about sustainability is that there are no experts about the future. Really aren't very many experts about the present. You know, we function based on all sorts of myths about what's actually going on and who's doing what and what's succeeding and failing and those sorts of things. The most important thing, I think, from a sustainability perspective to take place as you enter into this long and complicated and political problem in terms of choosing what future you would rather get is everybody needs to hold close to the concept of doubt. Richard Feynman, the physicist, talked about the difference between science and religion, and he said that the essence of science is doubt and the essence of religion is faith. And once you lose your capacity for doubt, the openness you have to new information, new ideas goes away. There are a lot of interests that will be involved in the Seattle waterfront planning process that will be the enemies of sustainability because they have become fundamentalists about their own point of view and their own information and are unwilling to embrace the ideas of others and figure out how they might marry together in a systems perspective to achieve a better end. Sustainability is about success. It's not about winning. It's about better understanding, and it's about the recognition that you will never actually know enough to make the perfect choice. All you can do is make the best choice given what you know today and introduce into your plans the flexibility to allow for the adaptation of the future. We have no right to decide how the future ought to live. We can only create circumstances in which they can make the best possible choice for them.
Gordon Price.
Can't believe it. They're actually doing it in less than 3 minutes. Terrible. Look, I want to note right at the beginning, coming from Vancouver, the dangers of presumption here. We've seen this phenomenon recently in my city of writers showing up on a day that doesn't rain, you know, walking around, talking to a few people. They go back and do a story on, gee, why can't we be more like Vancouver? Which is a real source of amusement to people at City Hall, because our citizens come up and say, gee, why can't we be more like, oh, Portland or someplace like that? But it's the experience that I have, so I am going to compare Vancouver and Seattle in ways that I hope are helpful. And the first big difference, well, in fact, the big difference between you and every other waterfront city that I can think of is that your waterfront is 3D. In fact, the vertical, the up and down, may be more important than the horizontal, the back and forth. My experience of coming here today was to go down a slope, find a bridge, another set of stairs, an elevator, whatever it was that allowed me to move up and down. The back and forth actually may be somewhat secondary for people. Now, this is a tremendous opportunity. As I said, I can't think of a waterfront city quite like it except for riverfronts. The ability to find different ways, as Michael was saying, of moving up and down, funiculars, ways of getting bicycles, stairs, bridges. In fact, imagine all the different possibilities. That would be a reason to come and visit the waterfront of Seattle, to experience the up and the down. Secondly, we don't have a railway along our waterfront, except for where the port is, and even that may disappear. Certainly the reasons we've been able to open up our waterfront is because the rail lines have disappeared. Ain't gonna happen here, as near as I can understand. Which does mean that wherever you cross the rail line, I think this is more relevant than actually the highway, is going to concentrate the activity of people moving back and forth. And again, a tremendous opportunity here, unlike most places. And really the removal of Alaskan Way isn't going to make much difference to that. What it will do is suddenly make the relevance of the visual impact of the escarpment abundantly apparent. Again, something quite tremendously exciting and unlike most other places. The concentration of activity, where the mix occurs, again, as Michael was saying, bringing all of these different uses, modes of movement, different kinds of people, this is where I think this waterfront is so much more potentially exciting than ours. In fact, our waterfront now is being criticized as being too homogeneous, beautiful, but dull. You've got tremendous diversity already. Building on that is clearly where you're going to be able to do just this extraordinary, outstanding job. There's any doubt about that. The model, in fact, as far as transportation, that may be more relevant is Sydney's Circular Quay, where about a dozen different uses. Our waterfront station, to some degree, may aspire to it. Again, you've got this tremendous opportunity here. Finally, I just want to touch on the one big thing that I think is so important here, and which determines your options with respect to any replacement. You're going to have a transportation dividend. At least, I certainly assume you are. You are putting staggering amounts of money into transportation options for people. The monorail, light rail, commuter rail, even the widening of 405, if it presumably allows for easier goods movement through the region, means that arguably there's going to be a reduction in need to provide space for vehicles. What are you going to do with that space? If you just substitute it again, absolutely guaranteed, vehicle use will just fill up to that level that you make available. So if you're going to seriously give people alternatives for moving in and through Seattle, take
Who your community is as a result of that experience. So gathering places need to be designed with gatherings in mind. It's more than a concept of open space.
In your utopia for Seattle waterfront, do you see one kind of signature gathering spot?
I would hope so. You know, you have this sculpture park coming online already, but imagine a space that is an artwork in itself that serves this kind of functions, that is dedicated to the community. I think there is a tremendous opportunity to do something that celebrates this connection between land and water, but it's dedicated to the to gathering of people.
And when you say gathering, literally have events there. I mean,
Yeah, but it needs to be designed in such a way that you don't need to have events there in order for it to work. So that's the secret of gathering places, I think. That
It seems to me Pier 62, 63, I believe, is what they call the concerts on the pier. Those are the numbers for that one. Which is, in effect, I mean, the Lyle Lovett proved it the other night. It is a nice gathering spot. It's closer down. Olympic Sculpture Park, I worry, is going to be a little far up to be that signature space. But what do you do, and maybe, Gordon, you have an answer to this, or Malenko, too. If you know that concert in the pier, it's a really beautiful spot, and it's great. When there isn't a concert going on there, and the scaffolding aren't there, it is dead. It's almost overwhelming and imposing to even walk out because there's nothing going on there.
Yeah, it's designed for one function, and it's designed well for that one function. But again, a gathering place serves many, many functions. It needs to be educational, it needs to be aesthetic, it needs to be environmental, it needs to be community-minded, it needs to accommodate gatherings, but a private lunch can be enjoyed there also.
Gary Lawrence, if you were to look at all the different environmental issues along the waterfront, what's the biggest problem right now? Is it sewage runoff? Is it noise pollution from the viaduct? Is it what's the biggest ecological F grade?
Well, historically, the uses down there have created a lot of toxic sediments in the bottom that are really harmful to aquatic environments. And for me, that's the most significant problem we have right now, is dealing with our historical abuse of the shoreline. There are all sorts of opportunities in new development to mitigate the effects, and the investments in separating the stormwater from the surface, from the sanitary sewers and all sorts of things. Huge amounts of public investment are going into trying to mitigate those most serious effects. And in many cases in the Duwamish, Kathy's here, she'll know a lot more about this than I do, Kathy Fletcher, but most of the major point pollution problems are, when they're well regulated, are being addressed. For me, it's the combination of the sediments that are there now and all the non-point problems, the leakage of petroleum and rubber compounds from the automobiles that in the rainwater wash out and get in there and exacerbate the existing problems, those sorts of things. Noise is also an issue, but again, that can be mitigated. When I got out of my car in the garage, the train was going by, and it was a cacophony of car alarms going off in the garage as the building was shaking and everything was going off, so that was a nice example of the kinds of conflicts we're introducing down here. But those are, I think, the key issues, the sediments and the non-point solutions that are affecting water quality that has a ripple effect throughout the whole aquatic environment.
Is I don't know if salmon spawn there, if they ever did, along the waterfront, but how aggressively and how deep, so to speak, do we move in a future waterfront to address that kind of restoration? Or are there some uses that are not ever going to realistically happen ecologically in the future?
When I first heard about your effort, this planning process, I thought a good title would be, what are we going to do next to poor old Denny Hill? Because we're essentially sitting next to Denny Hill. It was washed down here to create these tidelands and fill in. It's always hard to know how far back to go within these questions about restoration. There are important functions, not necessarily related to salmon, but other important fish in the Central Puget Sound that have been adapted, use the piers, very much like the striped bass in New York, use the piers as a breeding ground, those sorts of things. Those are really important. The Duwamish was and still is to some extent an important salmon stream. The fact that the surface waters that ran into Elliott Bay from the surrounding areas have all been piped makes it unlikely that we would ever create any natural salmon habitat in the CBD to support these sorts of things, which doesn't mean that we can't do a lot in this planning process to preserve the function of the tidelands as an important part of the aquatic environment. I personally don't think that big salmon runs beyond what we've captured in the aquarium, which is kind of remarkable, are a likely possible future.
Chris, the mayor's vision is to tunnel the viaduct. and that may or may not happen. If it were to happen, you have an unequivocal kind of buildable block, as Michael Sorkin talks about. And his preference, if he was to do the master plan, would be to, I think, if I heard him right, was to, think long and hard before you develop that block. Economically, give us sort of a view from that perspective. If you were to recapture a block of land all along the area that the viaduct currently is, what's the right use for that? No development, small-scale development, tiered development? Are we wasting our tax dollars if we don't do at least something economic with it?
No.
Meaning, are we wasting potential tax revenue? Is what I mean.
I think if you look at the value of, at one point looked at the value of all of the property within about, I guess it's probably in the central waterfront west of First Avenue, I believe. And that assessed value was just under $700 million, if I'm remembering it correctly. And if the amount of land space, and that's including the structures that are on that, so if you ask how much land you're actually creating by tunneling, the actual value of that land is going to be on the order of tens of millions of dollars. You know, spending $10 billion to create $10 million worth of land seems to be kind of a quick way to lose a lot. That seems to be the.
Was that an argument not to tunnel the viaduct, or to?
Well, part of it is a question of what public use is going to be, and what value you place on having it as open space or some other use rather than commercial. I think that if you actually look at the market value of the land and say it's you've tunneled it and it's vacant, and you ask yourself from the point of view of the city, do you want to spend what you could sell that land for in order to buy open space? Because that's essentially what you're doing when you decide not to turn it over. You ask yourself the question. And I think that a lot of folks would say that they would like to have the open space.
Gordon, transportation, we have a heavy and growing hub of uses down here. I mean, the cruise ship is one new example we didn't even have a couple years ago of a whole bunch of people that are coming and going. And you've got the trolley, you will have the monorail, you have buses, you have light rail, you have bikers, you have pedestrians, you have cars. Help us out here. Is Michael Sorkin's kind of add cows to the mix and slow things down the right? I mean, have we divided all the transportation corridors up so much that I don't know, we've lost something in the process?
Put saddles on the cows. I think maybe that's.
What's your vision for a future transportation hub down here?
Something like Circular Quay impresses me a lot in Sydney, and there more and more what they've done is layered in or mixed up the uses by, in the case of Circular Quay, removing the road behind, turning that into a public space, but certainly the excitement comes from people moving both vertically and horizontally in every which way through this really quite wonderful space, and having an opera house there doesn't hurt. So sure, if you can get that mix, that's fine. There still is going to have to be the utility constraints. In other words, how do you move people safely and efficiently through those spaces? But what people seem to love is, did you mention it, the passeggiata? This opportunity to stroll, to look at other and experience other people. And to the degree to which you can mix vehicles into that doesn't detract from it, that's probably the best success you're going to get.
A question about Coleman Dock, our ferry terminal. It's well used, but it's kind of an upside and a downside to it. One is when you get there's a lot of foot traffic coming from Bainbridge Island and the other places, and it's very exciting when the ferry comes in or it goes out, and you have a lot of pedestrian.
Honest about what the trade-offs are. We have this problem of trying to avoid conflict, even though every one of us has strong opinions about everything. So we create the pretense of agreement and end up coming up with policies that are so general that they aren't actionable. And then we can't understand why we're disappointed at the outcomes. This is a process, I think, to actually bring some clarity and the hard choices, like what the people for Puget Sound have been doing is in their scientific investigations and their understanding of the economic consequences and benefits of the aquatic environment, those sorts of things, getting that information on the table in an actionable way so we can make these hard choices. Because all of the choices, ladies and gentlemen, are going to be hard about what happens to the future of the waterfront.
Yes, over here, sir.
Hi, my name is Brian Steinberg with Action Better City. I have a question kind of relating about the waterfront, not just in that narrow strip of land, but what it means to the region. As we all know, we have a Growth Management Act in the state, and we're trying to encourage people to move downtown, live downtown, to curb sprawl. What I'd like to hear from the panel is a couple of things. One thing to encourage people to move downtown is to provide them with the infrastructure that we all like to have and need in our neighborhoods, open space, grocery stores, everything that we think about as places to build community. And right now our downtown has the least amount of open space, public open space, of any other major city in the United States. So one thing I'd like to hear is not only about those needs and what the waterfront might mean as a catalyst for creating a strong Growth Management Act, but also, especially from Mr. Price in Vancouver's experience, by having a strong pedestrian open space oriented waterfront, have you seen an economic benefit to the city and especially the properties along that waterfront?
Let's start with Gordon, and anyone else can take it too.
Oh, yes. What more can I say? Staggeringly so. Let me put it this way in the words of our central area planner at that time. Give the people everything they can get in the suburbs, and then we're incredibly competitive because we can offer them things they can't, which is the life of the city. But that does mean, yes, you have to have the open space, the grocery store. In fact, I chose 15,000 for a reason. That's the number of people you need for a good full-service, medium-sized supermarket. You have to give them the sense of neighborhood community, safety, green, clean, and good schools. And it starts getting more complicated, doesn't it? But all of those things, once they're put in place, create a, so use the word sustainable, that actually creates something I'd call a virtuous cycle. One good thing starts building on another. And before you know it, you're struggling with the problems of success. Your open spaces are getting too much use, different competing uses. You're getting congestion on your bike paths. It's just it's great stuff to have to struggle with. But it all happened very fast once the essentials were put in place and the opportunities were beginning to be realized.
Malenko?
Yeah. I think we are creatures of imagination, and that's why metaphors are so important. If we don't have metaphors, our imagination is impoverished, and all decisions are made out of our imagination. So coming back to what you were saying, Kathy, for example, I think would be a really great idea to to recreate some wilderness somewhere on this shore as a metaphor of that otherness that we need to relate to. It's there anyhow, but unless we have physical metaphors for that, we tend to forget. And so I would say in this mix of things, having some wilderness that is significant enough that it serves as a reminder to fertilize our imagination about the connection between the sea and air and creatures and humans, I think may be a very good idea.
Gary?
I'd also like to introduce the concept of patience. Diane, maybe you know, I can't remember, but it was in the late 70s, early 80s when the zoning was done for the Denny regrade. And it's taken 20 years or so for that to start to take off and create the kind of urban environment that works in GMA and provides the features. And even there, we're still waiting for the grocery store. This is going to take some time. It's one of the things that in a planning process you have to recognize is when the plan is done, the life is going to intervene, world's going to be different the next day, and these things are going to take some time. So that's why the principles are so important to incorporate in this, because much of what you put on the map in your visioning exercise is not going to happen. It's going to happen maybe the same functions, it might happen in a different way. You're essentially creating the groundwork for an evolution of the waterfront. You're not doing a plan for the future of the waterfront. You have to really focus on the principles.
Yes, yes, we'll go ahead and another question.
My name is Laura Cooper. I'm with Allied Arts and also just a concerned citizen. And it's been my experience in many waterfront cities around the world, visiting or living, that the places I liked best had individual shops or individual cafes, small, not franchised, in other words. So I was very interested to hear what you said, Gordon Price, about Granville Island. And what I'm wondering is whether we can zone in a way or just legally prohibit franchises from being the first businesses that jump in so that we don't end up with another American generic shopping experience.
Oh, boy. Well, the only place I know that has done something like that is San Francisco, as you might expect. Now, Granville Island is unique because it's a federal government-owned, in its entirety, operation, and they can choose the people who are the lessees there. So it's like almost like a shopping mall in that respect. They have control over it. As far as I know, the city of Vancouver, with its zoning powers, would not be able to discriminate on like that. In other words, we could discriminate as to whether they're going to be restaurants, but we couldn't say no to McDonald's.
Michael, do you have any thoughts on keeping chains out of communities?
Do it. No, well, another way of kind of formulating the legislative aspect of trying to do this would be to have a local content law in effect. I mean, when Boeing sells, airplanes to the South Koreans always insist that a certain percentage of the work goes to them. And this seems like a completely reasonable strategy for urban development in general. I mean, I'm always perplexed in New York that we buy our public transit rolling stock from the Canadians, when jobs could be invented in New York with that kind of legislation. So, I mean, unfortunately, I guess Starbucks has a lot of local content.
When I talked to other police officers in Seattle, they told me they know about Tukwila Police, and I'm surprised that Seattle will allow Tukwila Police, with the reputation they have, to come to Seattle. And I'm very lonely in Tukwila. I would like to be part of Seattle because in Tukwila we don't have these people. People are sleeping over there. They think the police are great. I thought that way myself. My son wanted to be a police officer. I was all for it. I even talked to Chief Haynes 2 years ago about my son being a police officer. So what I'm saying here is that Chief Haynes, in the article, in the thing, he says, I have to read this. Tukwila Chief Haynes said yesterday that Seattle Police will not take part in the investigation of the officer who has been suspended from SWAT duties, but not active duty, okay? Haynes also said he wanted to find out from Seattle Police what the department's orders were last week for a Tukwila officer who came to assist. Now, this is what's been going in Tukwila. Everybody who files charges, files a complaint, gets charged. I didn't file a complaint. I told the mayor, the city council, and everybody knows what happened to me, and I'm still going to trial and for a third time. And what I'm saying is that I need to know the names of those officers who came to Seattle, because, and I would like, because in Tukwila you cannot get those names. The judge won't give them to you. So I need them for myself, because we need those names. And I never again invite Tukwila to Seattle. And I wish I belonged to Seattle, because I will have more support to my situation.
Thank you. Next is 122, Sally Ann Hedreen, followed by Paul Leto, then Russ Peterson, then Alton McDonald, then Phil Lindsay is 126.
Hi, my name is Sally Ann Hendren. I just want to leave you with some imagery that actually narrates some of the personal video, the private video you saw. The silent protesters, and this haunts me to this day. I'm kind of glad you got to see part of this. The peaceful, nonviolent protesters that are sitting on the ground that you saw gassed, I also saw beat and they weren't doing anything. But my point, the image that I'm leaving you with, is two police officers immediately after they beat the protesters and sprayed them, gassed them, patted each other on the back. And I know there were a lot of photos taken of that, and I'd like to see them surface. If anyone, there was a lot of people there, not a lot of the big-time media, but since it's about time for 10 o'clock news, hello, yeah, these two officers patting each other on the back. It's really disturbing. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. You are Paul? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Paul Lato. I'm an area attorney. I employ another attorney and a paralegal. I was concussion bombed and gassed on Tuesday. My history is that the only other time I've been in or near the streets of Seattle to involved in a demonstration or near a demonstration was actually in support of the troops during the Gulf War. So I can't claim perfect pacifist credentials, and I've also had some experience in being around law enforcement people because I worked in Yellowstone very closely with law enforcement rangers there in Yellowstone. So I just want to say that I think I understand support the troops or support the police officer idea. However, I'm very concerned about what's going to happen with all of the extremely powerful and truthful testimony that we've heard today about intentional assault, about torture, about miscarriages, all these things, because it's not coming out in the media, and there's going to be a real tendency for this to be covered as, well, in the chaos of the situation, you know, sometimes things happen. And that is not what happened here. If I, as a litigation attorney, defended my client on assault charges by saying that my client had a hard, stressful job with many tense, chaotic moments, very stressful, I would be laughed out of court. The prosecutor would probably savage me and call this the latest Twinkie defense. And yet, what are people saying to excuse the police brutality but these very same things? It was a tense, chaotic situation they had the immediacy to deal with. This is a Twinkie defense, and it should not stand. My biggest concern is that all the progress made under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights may go away. And by progress, I mean torture still happened, but it was done in secret, and every government in the world denied it. Well, we have the prospect here in the United States is that torture happens, it's reported in the papers, and the people love it, and they say, we support you. You showed great restraint. This is an incredibly disturbing prospect, that these allegations would not be dealt with, and I hope they are dealt with. And I hope that the people that listen to this can understand that the next time somebody in the media says the police officers showed great restraint, they will understand why somebody might get in their face and be a little upset. And then somebody will understand that the next time somebody refers to violent demonstrations, they can understand why somebody gets in their face and gets real upset because of the false way it paints it and the fact that it ignores the fact that there was no property damage until after the police started gassing at 10 a.m.
Is Russ Peterson here? Russ Peterson. Russ Peterson will be followed by Alton McDonald, Phil Lindsay, David McGraw, Jerry Knight. Jerry Knight is number 128.
Hi, my name is Russ, and I'm new to Seattle. I just came down from Alaska a while back, and this is there's more people in this room than some towns that I've lived in. So this whole thing was really amazing to me. And I went down to take some pictures and got myself gassed and stuff like that. But I think that there's more important things here to me. I'm not here as an activist or anything at all. I'm just here as an American. And I feel like my rights were violated just for the fact that I was herded back and forth by clouds of gas, and I didn't even know where to go and stuff like that. And that's when I started meeting more people in Seattle than the 4 or 5 months that I've been here. And these people were totally peaceful. I mean, really peaceful. I saw a garbage can get tipped over, and 10 people ran over and picked it up. It's the truth. That's the truth. But I can see even the other people's point that there's, you know, there's a select few that are good, and there's a select few that are bad, both on the people that there's so many different issues that were here. It wasn't just the WTO or this or that. It was everybody standing up for the democracy itself, the fabric that this country, its flag is sewn on. And the bigger things to me, I think, is the problem side of your desk and the solution side. The problem side is that we can't identify which one of these people in here might have tossed a beer bottle. We can't identify the cops that did that on that video. That's the problem. That's what scares me. And the solution, I think, would be to make it on not just a little number on their badge, a big, huge letter or number on the back of their vest. We can't judge the police department as a whole by the select misaction of a few. We can't say that all the cops are bad, because they're not. And I'm sure that guy up here had the best of intentions, and that's it. But we can't misjudge them by a few misactions, the same way that we can't misjudge these people with so many points that are valid or not. You know, we can't judge them all by a select few. Anyways, I'd also like to see a breakdown in the costs. I think that the people have a right to that. How much for each window, and how much was broken where, because, you know, maybe it would, I think that they have a right for that. And now just being a resident of Seattle, I'm voting too, and I'm disappointed at those empty seats. I think this is very much important, because the whole world is watching. Not just these people, your constituents, the whole world. And I think that that's a very...
been brought up instead of just sitting there and looking at us. I want to hear that you're committed to making sure the police, who are obviously a rogue force and we're completely out of control, and I don't think any of you can deny that. I want to hear what you're going to do to make sure they never get that. They're never allowed to run wild in the streets like they did, injuring people.
Councilmember Licata suggested that at the end of the evening, we would make statements to explain to you where we think we're going. Our goal tonight was to hear from people.
Okay.
And then we will be laying out next steps. But, you know, we're also going to have a hearing next week, because there are more people who want to talk to us. As you would agree, it's important to listen before you decide to take action.
Okay, so, if you're not gonna say anything concrete other than that, I don't want that being part of my time, because you're just. Okay, so the suggestion that police in situations of big demonstrations be made to wear highly visible badge numbers. I mean, I'm talking about 6 inches. Otherwise, there's absolutely no accountability. And in regard to the fact that there has been no accountability and there are obviously many atrocities, the entire department needs to be completely reformed at this point. Every police officer should be screened for their attitudes about a wide range of issues, some of which other people have brought up. And they need to be retrained. Many of them need to be fired. I have a friend who used to work for the Seattle Police Department, and he used to have to accompany certain officers in the underground tunnel between the public safety building and the jail, because he knew that if the prisoner was alone with that officer, he would for sure be charged with resisting arrest and wind up beaten at the other end of it. These things have been happening for many, many years.
Thank you.
People have died at this. A guy in the Central District came to the door when cops knocked and had a remote control in his hand, and that gave the police an excuse to shoot and kill him. But on a more positive note, I'm absolutely inspired by the spirit that I've seen in the streets and the courageous resistance to this kind of treatment. And my hat's off to every demonstrator.
Thank you.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is John Marshall here? John Marshall. Dan Merkel. Is Dan still here? I don't see Dan. Okay, next we have Harry Levitt. Is Harry here? Harry will be followed by Jim McCulloch. Then 137 is Kirby. 138 is Edith. 139 is Brian Wiles. 140 is Siri Schrocker.
As
Schroeder?
probably several of you shared, and some of us, my name is Harry Levitt. I live at 15th and Union. And about 30 years ago, a vivid image sticks in my mind. There were about 10,000 of us crossing from the university campus. As we were crossing the freeway, people said, "Freeway," and we went down the freeway without a permit. And there was we were stopped about the apex of the freeway, and there were a linear array of about 50 state patrolmen with fixed bayonets. The leaders negotiated. I don't know if you were there, Nick, or some of the leaders negotiated. And I went up and talked to one of the fellows in the end with the fixed bayonet, and I said, "Geez, there's 10,000 of us. There's 50 of you. What are you going to do?" And he said, "Don't worry. We're college educated, kind of like you, and the leaders are going to convey, and things are going to happen, and it's going to be okay." And it was okay. No one got hurt. 4 people were killed at Kent State in the weeks prior to that. And the negative thing I like to say is I had that same image Tuesday night in my mind on 6th and Summit as I was in the street there talking to a handful of mainly residents and talking to a phalanx of masked with their little peace card. It seemed ridiculous. It seemed ridiculous of that presence with a few demonstrators in the street. And I had that flashback, and I felt very disappointed and embarrassed for my city. On a more positive note, again, a flashback, about 30 years ago, I was in the Hub Ballroom. There were 6 of us in the audience to see my hero. It was the Hub Auditorium at the UW. It held about 500. Mm-hmm. And there were 6 of us to see Ralph Nader then. This week, there were thousands. And I was amazed because I wandered around the city. I was in Studio 42, 420. I hope some of you were, to see the amazing preparation that went into these peaceful demonstrations from both the Direct Action Network and the Labor Environmental Coalition. From Benaroya Hall, two all-day seminars the week before last week, to the Free Baptist Church up in Yesler. The amazing preparation, the amazing passion that went into what happened from the coalition with thousands in the streets and the hundreds of Direct Action people and their support. And I think that showed in the discipline of those 2 groups of protesters. So my questions to you would be, and just to, it seems like Stanford, hopefully community policing will continue, and the idea of nonviolent training, the kind of training that some of these people have, we can just follow through and proceed in that kind of direction. The idea that the businesses, if I were a business in downtown Seattle, I own property up on Capitol Hill. The last thing I do is close the door and leave. So these businesses that locked the door and left, they should have had people standing out there, and the businesses should have been encouraged to police themselves, and I think that would have prevented some windows from being broken.
Harry, can you wrap up?
Yep. And the final thing is, it does amaze me that with all the preparation of the peaceful demonstrators, and you folks must have known that our police force couldn't have isolated those 50 or so young boys who caused most of the damage. And I think you should really look into how that was allowed to occur. Thank you very much.
Okay, is Jim McCulloch here? Jim McCulloch. Is Kirby here? Kirby is number 137. Are you Kirby? Okay, and is Edith here, 138? Edith? I don't see Edith. Brian Wiles is 139. Is Brian here? Brian. Okay, you will follow Kirby. Kirby, would you please speak?
Hi, my name is Kirby Kirschman, and I was a small farm town boy in South Dakota. I grew up and ended up in art school in Berkeley and a Jewish yeshiva in New York studying rabbinical Judaism and Jewish law, and then a teacher in Boston for about 5 years. So it's kind of a spectrum, but I'm a lot of influences in my life, and I came away from this week feeling that there are a lot of righteous causes, a lot of righteous people, and a lot of brave people.